Okay, May, don't say anything cringe. Only say things that are based. What's up, sports fans? Quick thoughts on Furiosa, the sequel to Mad Max Fury Road. It's the first Mad Max movie that isn't explicitly about Mad Max or really containing Mad Max, even though he is consequently in one shot of the movie implied, but it's like hard to necessarily say that the movie's a Mad Max movie just because Mad Max is maybe in the movie. I thought it was super duper cool. You know, I like action movies. I think that there's this like idea that action and art can't be the same thing, which like John Woo would love to have words with you about that. I actually think the celebration of action is good and cool and neat. Actually, I prefer when action movies are artful. Like, for instance, and I know this is a complete tangent, but I went and saw The Beekeeper earlier this year kind of as a laugh, and I was baffled at how terrible that movie handled any of its own artfulness. So I appreciate a movie that is artful and action. I liked it. I even think I loved it. I think that if Fury Road had never come out, everyone on Earth would think this movie was the dopest movie ever. Perhaps even based and not cringe. Harmony Korine at a film festival said that he wanted his new movie to come across as based and not cringe, and I have been laughing and saying that ever since. So I apologize. This is just me now. I thought the villain was very, very neat. His character's name is Dementus. He's played by Chris Hemsworth. I think Chris Hemsworth is not getting enough praise for really disappearing into this role. I think he handles the role like really well. I think he's a much better actor than most people give him credit. Yes, he come from Thor, and Thor is Thor. But remember in the Marvel MCU how everybody at the beginning was kind of like, Thor is very milquetoast and boring, and we all know what his character is, and there's not a lot of interesting whatever to him. He's just kind of a big muscle man, to thinking that he was perhaps the best character in the MCU because he was like charming, funny, interesting. He could play up the dramatic. Like, we ended up really liking him generally as that. And I also think that Chris Hemsworth has done a lot of stuff like post MCU that has showed that he's like an incredible performer. In this role, he really shines in a lot of ways. He gets to the meat of the character in an interesting way. There's one specific part where he's like torturing people and killing them, and like George Miller is a great director, very clever, just holds on Chris Hemsworth until he gets bored, and then he like fidgets around frustrated and is like, okay, stop torturing them, I'm tired of this. Anya Taylor-Joy is Furiosa for like half of the movie, and the other half of the movie it's a small child. Both performers of Furiosa are incredibly good. I think it's interesting how she went from being in The Witch to being like kind of a pop culture icon, which is really weird because The Witch is just like such a small movie that has a lot of like esoteric things kind of on its mind that I don't think a lot of audience members really got at the time, but proved to be a little bit of a cult classic. I think a lot of people love that movie in ways that it wasn't loved when it came out, even though there were some of us that were like huge proponents of it. But it's interesting to me that she would go on to become such a like pop culture figure. She's almost like a stereotype parody of herself. You see her on posters giving the like DreamWorks face, and you're like, uh-oh, I don't know if I want to see that movie because that looks kind of cringe and not based. But in this role, she's very based and not cringe. I gotta quit that. No, she's really, really good. It's very funny to see her doing a role so serious so well. Yeah, you got to give her props. I think she is a great actress. I just think that she's being misused in a lot of contexts, let's say. The most interesting thing about Furiosa to me is that it wasn't like Fury Road that much. I mean, it has a lot in common with Fury Road, but in reality, Furiosa is its own thing, but it also harkens back to like the earlier Mad Max movies, where it's a lot of like talky parts and a lot of political intrigue, not as much people slamming cars into each other, even though there is a high quantity of that. I don't know if Fury Road and Furiosa compare in runtimes. I don't believe that Fury Road was 2.5 hours long. I don't know if it feels its length or not. When the movie started and it starts with her as a child, there was a part of me that was like, uh-oh, I don't know if this is going to be as cool, because like just cutting to her already kind of being Furiosa and then telling a story about her in that context would have been maybe more interesting. In actually watching the movie, like nothing in the movie, and this is true of like pretty much all of George Miller's work, including Babe, is all of them like lend themselves to themselves so constantly. Every single line of dialogue, every single shot, every single action taken by anyone in the movie builds on itself and keeps the progression of the story moving. It's just fascinating to watch that unfold. Like, yes, it starts with her as a child in the green place. Almost instantly, we're drawn right into the main story. So it ends up being like a great decision, even though it looked like a not as great decision immediately. The movie surprised me a lot as it moved along. I thought that was really, really cool. I also really like how the movie is kind of telling the fable of Furiosa and Dementus without telling it in a way that's supposed to be like concrete, one thing after another leads you to Fury Road, because we don't actually really want a prequel to Fury Road. I don't think anybody did. And based on the numbers and like how this movie is performing right now at box office, I don't think anybody actually wanted a prequel to Fury Road. I don't think people wanted a sequel to it either. It kind of like stood so firmly on itself that it didn't need anything else. Because the movie is like the fable of Furiosa and tells an utterly different story in the same world, in the same region of the world, it has a tendency to just solve that problem altogether. It isn't really a prequel to Fury Road. It's like a completely different story that just happens to have a lot in common with Fury Road. That's good and great even. I like how disjointed it is with the other film, just to kind of pull you out of the idea that you're watching Fury Road but -1. If there's one thing that's true of George Miller, it's that as he's like gotten older, he's gotten a lot more bold in his decision making. Like every character in it is like so comically over the top. It almost makes Furiosa look normal in context. I think the most normal character in the whole story is the guy that drives the rig before Furiosa takes over. That guy is like so just down to earth, which is bizarre in a world where everyone has truly lost their mind, which is largely what the movie is about. It's about how everyone's lost their mind and no one knows how to actually cope with the fact that they've lost their mind. I like the ending. I think the ending is really cool, how it just is mostly dialogue talking about the theme of the movie, about how, like, yeah, everyone's gone crazy because there's really nothing they can do to change their situation. Everything that they left behind is, like, gone, and they can't take that back from anyone else. They can't really get revenge for it. In a weird way, she doesn't really successfully obtain revenge at the end of the movie, which makes it a good revenge movie, because good revenge movies should be about how you can't actually obtain revenge. Just about everything about Fury Road does it right, and I thought that it was endlessly fun and fascinating. Unfortunately, no one on Earth wants to see it, and probably no one will. I imagine this movie hitting streaming and marketing it on streaming as like, this is the prequel to Fury Road, and even then a lot of people won't watch it, and like the marketing for it is going to be cringe as fuck. I don't know. That's just it's just a take I have. I don't know. But as someone who loves Mad Max, like pretty much all of the Mad Max movies, I think that Furiosa fits really well in that, while also establishing itself as significantly different, while also giving us more of the same but in a new way. Overall, I think that it's great. So there is some weird stuff in the movie, which I guess I'm not going to say is like bad stuff. Well, one of them is kind of bad, but there's just weird stuff. Like, one of the weird things in the movie is how much dialogue there is. With George Miller making Fury Road, it's clear that most of the movie was like storyboarded out so that action flow was the most important thing, and like lines of dialogue could be as brief or cut out as possible just to get us to move to the next point. It was felt in the movie, right? Because it feels like the action never stops. It feels utterly relentless. Where this movie, it feels like it's constantly taking a break to have a conversation. It's not to say that that's like a bad thing. It just is different. It's weird in context of Fury Road, because one, I think going into this, would expect the movie to be at least semi on that relentless pace, but it's really not. He takes a backseat and just kind of lets the characters work it out a lot, and there's a lot more just direct drama spoken between characters. It's kind of relieving. You like to see it. It's just weird to see it in context of Fury Road. And so I think that one thing is like living in the shadow of Fury Road is very hard. I don't know how you follow Fury Road even remotely. So doing a movie that's a bit more like subdued, where characters just get to talk about themes and things they feel while also taking action when they need to, like every character is very proactive in what they try to do. I think that that's fascinating, and it also gives like rise to a very different kind of villain. Immortan Joe as a villain is mostly a visual with a whole lot of like fascist and like power-based warlord-esque energy, right? Like the way it's framed is you're just like, that's a bad dude, like upon seeing him, not even really about hearing him. Where represented here as the adverse is like Dementus has a lot of character, but mostly because he gets a lot of time to just like talk and make decisions, and you get to watch him walk through a lot of these decisions. You find that his decision making is like utterly flawed. He doesn't know how to command an army. He's an anti-warlord. He's not a warlord in the sense that Immortan Joe is a warlord. They're different. One is a very bad leader. He says it in the end of the movie where he's like, yeah, but can you make it epic? You know, he's not good at things. He just wants to feel something. He just does crazy shit just to do crazy shit to distract him from the fact that he's like very, very bummed out that the world died, which is kind of how everyone feels. It ends up representing everything in a much larger sense. Slowing down the pace and making the dialogue scenes like way more of a highlight in the movie is a good decision because it gives us an utterly different movie. It's a weird decision given that I don't think that that's what anybody expected. So I think that's going to rub people the wrong way, maybe. Like, I can imagine a scenario where somebody who likes Fury Road does not like this movie, even though I clearly am not in that group. I just think it's possible. You know what I mean? So here's a weird thing that I didn't get entirely. I was under the impression in Fury Road that because the titular Fury Road is the titular Fury Road, and Furiosa drives the rig down Fury Road, that she was colloquially named Furiosa to imply that she is both a lady and someone who drives the rig down Fury Road. So it was just like an honorific that she was given. You are Furiosa, the driver of the rig down the Fury Road. You know, it just made sense. It was something that they didn't have to outright state, and I knew it. So it's very bizarre that at the beginning of the movie, they just call her, as a child living in the green place, Furiosa. This was brought up by a couple of different videos, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there where I was like, Okay, but here's how I was interpreting it, at least. So the fact that they just throw that out and she's always been Furiosa, I kind of think that that plays into the fable aspect, because the people who knew her as Furiosa wouldn't have known her any other way. So if they are to tell the tale of Furiosa, they wouldn't be telling it literally as it happened, but rather what they, like, the information they had at the time. So, like, of course, everyone would call her Furiosa as a child. Even though it is weird to my ear and I feel strange about seeing it, it does kind of make sense. It's the history man, right? The history man is telling the story. So the history man doesn't know what Furiosa's name is. It was never stated to anybody. So he, in telling this story to us, like as a fable of the wasteland, would only refer to her as Furiosa. So it has internal logic. It's just weird to watch. It's weird to like try to wrap your head around when you're watching it. There is such a good justifiable reason why she's called that in the prior film, and names also don't matter. I think about the fucking scene in Han Solo where someone like, your name is Han and you're alone, your name is Han Solo. Like, it would be worse if someone was like, she is Furiosa of the Fury Road, I guess, but like any naming convention in a prequel feels bad, man. I don't know. I don't like it. A lot of people are talking about how the CGI is not good, or at least some of the CGI is very noticeable. I didn't have a problem with it, because I don't care about CGI. Like, I understand its utility. It doesn't bother me. It keeps costs down on some things, but also, like, there are just some stunts you can't do. There are just some things with actors you can't do. I mean, every actor who's ever worked on one of these movies has said that it was, like, uncomfortable and horrible to work on, probably because they have sand in their ass, and they're having to blow up cars all around them. Like, yeah, it's probably fucking terrifying. CG protecting people isn't a bad thing. Sure, it could have maybe looked better. People haven't gotten over the day for night in Fury Road. People talk about that all day long. And in this movie, they just like double down. He's just like, yeah, it's day for night. We're just going to do it again. It's going to look the exact same. And no one seems to be complaining about that. I don't know. It's an artifice. There's a lot of artifice to it, but the things that it does with it are generally artful, and probably also to protect the cast from the crazy shit that they probably want to do to them, but legally cannot. So I think that it's fine. That is my general take on that. So overall thoughts on Furiosa. Not as good as Fury Road, but very welcome and cool, and I liked it. I would almost say that I loved it. I think that it is a good change for the series. George Miller is not going to be making an awful lot of these, as he is probably soon to meet the grave. As of now, this is what we get, and this is how he's feeling, and this is what he wanted to make with it, and that's great. Good on him. It's a slower paced movie. It's a lot more character driven. It's a lot more dialogue driven. It's a lot more comparable to the OG Mad Max trilogy. So if you're somebody who already liked Mad Max like prior to Fury Road, you will feel comfortable in this space. I think it plays on the comforts of an audience member who is already in the know. It's like the same level of movie. Whereas if you're like, a young person who saw Fury Road and thinks that it's dope, and you want to see another like crazy dope action movie, I don't know how you'll feel about it. You might be disappointed. Feels bad. Feels sorry for you, because I appreciated it a lot. That's Furiosa. I would definitely say go see it. But you won't, because no one goes to the movies. No one goes to the movies. This one is the closest to worth it that I've seen in the last year. Also, tell you what, I've seen movies over the course of the year. I haven't made a lot of videos though, and I think partially that's because nothing has been good. Nothing has been that good. Here and there, I'll see a movie that I think is great, but then I don't really have much to say about it. Like, I saw Monkey Man. That movie was fucking awesome, but I like straight up didn't have anything to say about it. Insert example here. There's been plenty of movies that I thought were cool, but I just didn't really have a take on beyond like the obvious. Like, a lot of movies are so well communicated now that they kind of speak for themselves, and then the opposite of that is some movies are so poorly constructed and poorly communicated that like you just don't like them. It's not like there's like interesting bad movies. Everything feels so uninteresting. So this is the first movie that I felt like I could actually talk about with any experience or interest, or that I had a take on, I guess. But yeah, overall review of the movie theaters, boo. Like, they got to get some good stuff in there again, you know, but unfortunately they won't, because we have like a Cleopatra movie coming. Like, we are doing the same damn thing again where everything falls apart and sucks. So get ready for that. I'm surprised movie theaters are not like closing en masse more frequently than they are right now, because like there just hasn't been anything good. Everything feels like super duper artificial, and this goes for like a lot of art right now. The last like year has been the dry spell to end all dry spells. There just like hasn't been an awful lot of good art, like in general. Very disappointing, very sad, kind of depressing, but nonetheless, I mean, you know, we make do where we can. I have been not really watching movies, but I've also been working on life stuff. I've been working on a new book, which I have here. Take a look at my new book. It's gonna, when you buy it, it looks like this. I am entirely joking. It looks very different than that. It's called Rosalind, and I don't have a release date yet because I'm still working on it, but it is nearly finished. And then I have 2 new book reissues, which I had to prep for and create a bunch of stuff. There's like internal illustrations, there's new covers. A lot of the interiors of the book had to be arranged and organized and cleaned up. So I'm with a publisher now. The publisher is Hear Us Scream Press. You can pre-order my 2 books, Fluids and Girl Flesh, with the new art on their website. Rosalind should be following later this year. As far as everything else, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I know that I haven't been uploading super a lot, but I'm always working on stuff. I make music, I write books, I do hella stuff all the time. Please consider giving me $1 or so on Patreon, as it would help me live my life quite a bit better. Me and my girlfriend just bought a house, so a little bit more would not hurt. And I do intend to try to make more videos in the future. I'm desperately trying to find something that's worth talking about in the world, you know, other than like politics and religion. Keep an eye out for that. I'll probably be uploading again relatively soon. I do apologize for how long it's been, but you play the hand that you're dealt. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.